Last April, I spoke at the National Rifle Association convention, and one of the people I met who was incredibly impressive was Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke. This is a good guy. This is a smart guy. He's a truly patriotic American. And as I said, he's the Milwaukee County Sheriff. And he was holding a press conference a couple of weeks ago, and he just got angry and took the occasion to talk about Ferguson and Holder and what was going on in the country. And people have referred to this, but I don't know if you've actually heard it. This guy's a true blue American. He happens to be an African American, but he's a true blue American like all of us, regardless of our pigmentation and so forth. So let's take a little bit of time to hear what the man had to say, because you're hearing Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and Farrakhan and all the other malcontents and miscreants. This is a sheriff who's had enough, like the rest of us. Cut 4, go.
Someone mentioned Eric Holder, and I'm known for not sugarcoating things. This pissed me off. I sat up and watched as the events unfold in Ferguson, Missouri. Unfortunate situation, obviously. Anytime a law enforcement officer uses force and takes a life, it deserves a thorough, transparent vetting, investigation. We all kind of agree with that. But then some groups started to converge on the small town of Ferguson, Missouri, like vultures on a roadside carcass. Groups like the new Black Panther Party, people like Al Sharpton, to come and exploit that situation, and instead of coming in to help and try to restore calm, poured gas on that fire with some of their inflammatory and irresponsible rhetoric. And I sat up there and listened to Governor Nixon, and I sat up there and listened to Claire McCaskill, the senator, and then I sat up there and listened to Eric Holder throw law enforcement officers under the bus for political expediency. These are the same individuals at election time that come around wanting support from law enforcement organizations, right? They all stand up there. I'm supported by this fraternal organization and this police association, and I've received an excellent rating by the... They do that when they need us. But now there was an opportunity to improve their bona fides with some of these interest groups like the new Black Panther Party, to flaunt their racial sensitivity and threw law enforcement under the bus. I expect that from Governor Nixon. I expected that from Claire McCaskill. Those are nothing but two-bit politicians. They do that sort of. That's what politicians do. You know that. But I did not expect that from Eric Holder, who calls himself a law enforcement officer. And instead of talking responsibly, instead of measuring his words, because that's what's needed at a time like that, you got to measure what you say, because tensions are high, and the wrong thing said can make a bad situation worse.
This is Sheriff David Clarke of Milwaukee County. Isn't he superb? He wasn't done. He was just getting started. Cut 5, go.
And he sat up there and talked about how he has seen law enforcement officers profile. He's been victim of racial profiling himself, and he named 2 situations. One in a traffic stop in New Jersey, and he said, I remember feeling the indignation as they searched my vehicle. And then he talked about a situation when he was in Georgetown, not too far from here, and how he and a friend were stopped on the way to the movie theater, and they felt that they were racially profiled. And he said, I was a federal prosecutor when those things happened. And I said, wait a minute. Mr. Attorney General, if you felt those officers had violated your Fourth Amendment rights and you're a federal prosecutor and you didn't say anything at the time, on behalf of everybody in the United States, you could have done something if you felt that. You could have made a complaint. Because all of us kind of realize in law enforcement, right, we testify, what do they say in court? If you didn't write it down, you didn't report it, it didn't happen. And that's what I was thinking. Oh, really, Mr. Attorney General? You didn't report it then. You didn't write it down, but you're telling us some 10, 15 years later for self-serving purposes. I thought, why did you do that? You insulted every law enforcement officer, every man and woman that puts on that badge and uniform every day, risks their lives in service to their community. And I thought, how could you do that? Who cares about what happened to you? What about the people of Ferguson, Missouri right now? Who cares about you, Eric Holder? But he did that for self-serving purposes. So I felt he owed an apology to every man, not to me. I'm a big boy, I have big shoulders. But to every person that serves in your agencies, who puts on that uniform and goes out. And this man sat up there and kind of insinuated that these law enforcement officers go out with some nefarious or malicious intent in their heart to deny people their rights and to indiscriminately shoot and take people's lives for nothing. And I was incensed by that. And that's why I said something publicly. And of course he didn't apologize. And of course he won't apologize. I don't expect him to, but I called him on it.
This man should have a national platform beyond this program. This is a man who could be president. Oh, I know he'd have to fight through the Wall Street Journal and the Bush family and all the rest. But he's absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. One more minute of Sheriff David Clarke. Cut 6, go.
Because that's the same guy who shows up at the Law Enforcement Memorial here in May in Washington, D.C. I've heard him speak. I was at the one 2 days ago as the name of one of my officers was placed on the wall. And he sits up there talking about the courage and commitment of our law enforcement officers across the country, and they serve with dignity and all that stuff. And I thought, you SOB, you didn't talk about the racial profiling then. Why are you bringing this up now? That's why I said something. So the reason why I brought this up today, remember that the next time this guy comes to your town, all right, because he's on a mission with these investigation and law enforcement agencies anyway. I think right now they're in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Just got done with Seattle and putting these people under consent decrees and basically identifying them as racist institutions and racist cops, so on and so forth. So keep that in mind, okay, when he comes to visit your town and talk to your law enforcement officers or whatever. And when he does, go up and ask him. Have you offered that apology yet, Mr. Attorney General, the one that Sheriff Clarke asked you about? Just watch his reaction, okay?
This man is qualified to be a senator, a governor, or president, in my humble opinion. Just remember the insular nature of Washington, where they think only governors and senators and so forth are qualified to be presidents. That's not true. Or Lincoln would never have been a president. Or Madison would never have been a president. And I can go on. And, of course, Jimmy Carter was a governor, wasn't he? Last time I checked. Charles Barkley. Now, you've heard people talk about some of his comments or play a little clip here and there. I know this is a great risk to be playing these. I'm not a big guy that plays audio endlessly on a program to kill time, but I think these are voices that need to be heard rather than the repetition with the miscreants and the malcontents and worse. Barkley was on a sports station in Philadelphia last week. Hat tip, by the way, right scoop for David Clarke, and now hat tip the Blaze. And it started like this. Cut 1, go.
That's like them jackasses who are looting. Those aren't real black people. Those are scumbags. No, real black people, they're not out there looting. I just watched a great story on CNN where a bunch of folks, really amazing folks, wouldn't let them burn down an establishment. It was a great story. I was in Philly this summer when I saw 4 black kids went in a store and left money when nobody was in the store. But unfortunately, the way the media portrays a lot of black people, we only put the negative black people on television, Mike. We don't put the good, hard-working black people. And that's what I said, and that's what I meant. There's a perception among some black people, you're not a thug, a hood rat. You don't wear your pants down by your ass. You're not black enough. And they always holding us back, plain and simple. And I ain't shutting up, and I ain't backing down.
Well, and you never do. So since you brought up Ferguson, let's bring that up because we've been talking about it in the first hour of this show. Mm-hmm. Your reaction to the reaction in Ferguson. Now, me as a white person, I see that as a reflection of black America's mistrust of white authority and the American judicial system. And I mean, to me, it was going to happen.
Let's get to Barkley.
Because there's just no trust out there. How did you see that whole situation?
Well, I thought it was really unfortunate. Like I say, I need to really read the grand jury because, Mike, we live in a quick story media, social network situation. I'm hearing things today I haven't heard at all. That even the black witnesses said this guy came 20 feet at the officer. They were fighting inside the car and 2 bullets went off. I didn't know the kid came. I mean, the blood splatter, so the guy came at the cop 20 feet. I'm not saying who's right or wrong. I'm just hearing the true story that came out of the grand jury investigation.
Charles Barkley makes 100 times more sense than the Attorney General of the United States. You want to know the difference? The Attorney General of the United States is a radical ideologue. Charles Barkley is not. Here's a little bit more. Cut 2, go.
Yeah, the evidence would lead you to believe that the officer acted properly. But the mistrust, black people aren't going to ever see that. And that's where the problem lies.
Stop here. I'm sick of liberal white guys, particularly these sports idiots who actually think they know something. Stepping all over Charles Barkley, who's trying to make a point. Go ahead.
Well, let me just say this, man. I think we have to be, I know I'm black, but I'm going to try to always be honest and fair. We have to be really careful with the cops, man, because if it wasn't for the cops, we'd be living in the wild, wild west in our neighborhoods. I think we can't pick out certain incidents that don't go our way and act like the cops are all bad. I hate when we do that because think about it. Do you know how bad some of these neighborhoods would be if it wasn't for the cops? Listen, and first of all, it's always great to play Monday morning quarterback. Like he shot him a lot. Like, well, if you got a gun and you're fighting with somebody, you're not going to shoot him once. You're going to pull the trigger X amount of time. Like I say, I don't know what happened in Ferguson. Nobody knows what happened. I want to take the time as a responsible person, read the grand jury statement. Like I say, I didn't know they got to fight inside the car. That what tells me something like, wow, there's 2 shots in the car, and it's been proven that the young kid came toward this guy for, I want to say 22 feet. I didn't know that until this morning because the media has rushed. I can't believe anything I hear on television even.
Well, you got to understand that most of this evidence, though, is coming from the mouth of the police officer. That there isn't a witness. All
right, stop there. This guy's an idiot. I don't know who he is. Mike. Most of the evidence coming from the mouth of the police. Oh, no, clown. It's not, actually. They didn't just take the word of the police officer. They did take his testimony. There were witnesses. This guy hasn't looked at any of this grand jury stuff. There was forensic evidence. More than one autopsy. So it's not just coming from the mouth of the police officer, clown. Now let's get to Barkley. Go.
Forensic evidence.
Yeah, the forensic evidence would indicate that he acted properly, but he's also telling the story. And I don't know, like the other witness.
But I'm saying, I was 3 or 4 witnesses who were black said exactly what the cops said. See, that's why I don't like talking about racial stuff with the media, because, like, they love this stuff. They love to see a great, not even a great story. Controversy sells, unfortunately. It's just an awful situation. A young kid got killed. Man, the cops are the last line of defense. We shouldn't just jump to conclusions.
No, I got you. I got you.
All right, that's enough. I don't want to hear this DJ sports guy anymore. Excellent, Charles Barkley.